Hi everyone! So for my formal analysis, I chose to use Edvard Munch's The Scream. The Scream painting is one of modern art's most iconic paintings. It was painted by the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch, who was deemed a father of Expressionism. This painting has 4 versions as well as a lithographic. The artist used many elements of design that help interpret the meaning behind the subject. I will go over the analysis, describing in detail how the use of line, contrast, and balance achieve the philosophies of evaluation. Just some quick facts. This painting was originally titled The Scream of Nature, and it has also inspired popular culture today. Wes Craven's film Scream, they used the subject in this painting for inspiration to the mask used in that film. So this is an abstract painting. It is composed of tempera, oil, and pastel on an unprimed cardboard. The width is 73.5 centimeters by a height of 91 centimeters. It is both two-dimensional and three-dimensional. So here I just wanted to include the 4 versions in the lithographic. So I also want to state that the first painting is the painting that I chose to focus on for my project. This first painting was done in 1893, and then in 1893 he also made a second, and that was in pastel. In 1895 he made another pastel version, which is now a private collection. In 1910, he did his final tempera painting, and then in 1895, there was a few lithographics actually, but this is one of them. So for the elements of design, I wanted to point out that there is a usage of straight lines, diagonal and vertical lines along the bridge. The 2 background figures also made up of vertical lines. The organic lines, which are wavy lines that are used throughout the painting, the sky, coastline, the water, and the main figure. And there are contour lines outlining the bridge and the main figure. For shape, this painting uses geometric rectangular shapes within the bridge and the railing, which provide a 3-dimensional concept to the work of art. The usage of organic shapes surrounding the coastline and body of water create a realistic feel. However, the main figure has a very unstable shape, thus it is abstract and also helps provide a 2-dimensional concept. With value, we have dark tones within the main figure's clothing and the 2 figures in the background. The body of water uses a mix of dark tones and light tones. For texture, there is continuous movement of the wavy swirls and line usage that create implied texture, but there is no actual texture being used. For color, the usage of warm colors throughout as well as complementary colors, blue and orange. The color use is very intense, and there are also analogous colors used throughout the sky. Describing the subject: a distorted, sexless figure with the mouth and eyes wide open in horror. This figure appears to be in agony or perhaps screaming. There are 2 more figures in the background on the left side of the painting. All figures are on a bridge that overlooks a body of water. The sky has an arrangement of colors, red, orange, yellow, and hints of blue, which appear to be a sunset. So facts about The Scream. This historical piece was painted in 1893 during the Symbolism movement by Edvard Munch. Through influence from 19th century symbolism and 20th century German expressionism, Munch produced art that was poignant, controversial, and is still widely appreciated. particularly in Western Europe. His work contributed to an evolving late 19th century movement in poetry and the visual arts, referred to as symbolism, which developed in Northern and Central Europe and in Russia. The 1895 version that was done in pastel sold at an auction in 2012 for nearly $120 million. This was the highest that was ever sold at that current time. I cannot find anything that supported that the 1893 painting was commissioned. Analysis using the principles of design. The emphasis of this painting is the distorted figure shown in the forefront. The usage of black clothing sets a contrast to the figure, also pointing out that it is the subject in this painting. The swirling lines throughout the painting create movement that leads the main figure. This would be the directional force. Our eyes are drawn to the two figures in the background with use of straight lines on the bridge that lead to them. Edvard Munch used intense colors, the shades of yellow and orange, which contrast against the blue in the water. These colors pair well as they are also complementary. The repetition of organic shapes, lines, and colors help unify this painting, although it is very chaotic in a sense of the abstract itself. There is asymmetrical balance, and it is achieved with the body of water in the right of the background and the two figures on the left side along the bridge. Interpretation of the screen. It was inspired by an experience Munch had while walking and watching the sunset. It is quoted, "Felt as though the whole of nature was screaming." The title is significant to the meaning as it describes what Munch was expressing through the painting. The scream also came with a narrative from Munch himself, penned with a diary entry dated January 22nd of 1892. The English translation reads as following. I was walking along the road with two friends. The sun was setting. I felt a wave of sadness. The sky suddenly turned blood red. I stopped, leaned against the fence, tired to death, looked out over the flaming clouds like blood and swords, the blue-black fjord and city. My friends walked on. I stood there quaking with angst, and I felt as though a vast, endless scream passed through nature. It has been suggested that the dramatic colored sky was inspired by a volcanic sunset seen by Munch after the Krakatoa eruption in 1883, and by a sighting of stratospheric nacreous clouds, and also that it is a part of the artist's expression of the scream from nature. It has been suggested that Edvard Munch took from a Peruvian mummy in France the pose of exhibitional horror that made his famous painting The Scream, now hanging in somber Oslo, so haunting. By using the distorted figure, the wavy lines throughout the painting, and the contrast of colors, Munch did achieve what was intended for the meaning of this painting. The title, however, can easily be misleading without further research, as most would think that the main figure is screaming. Personal interpretation. After researching Edvard Munch and his personal life, I learned that he was very disturbed mentally and endured a lot of trauma growing up involving death of loved ones from an early age. Richard Cork states the following about the life of the artist. Ever since his childhood, Edvard Munch had been confronted by the trauma of fatal illness. His mother died of tuberculosis when he was 5. 9 years later, his favorite sister, Sophie, succumbed to the same disease at age 15. The double loss left him exposed to the oppressive influence of his father, a neurotic military surgeon obsessed with discipline, religion, and the need to destroy his son's unholy paintings of nude figures. Death haunted Munch's vulnerable mind, even though he lived to 80. Nancy Ireson also states the following about Edvard Munch and how his life affected his works. Edvard Munch was a disturbed individual whose works, fueled by emotional torment, developed in relative isolation, or at least so read the accepted histories of Norway's most famous expert. Of course, numerous biographical elements support each a narrative. His depression following the death of his father in 1889, his turbulent relationship with Tula Larsen, his fight with Ludvig Karsten in 1905, and his several treatments for alcoholism and neurosis. Due to these statements, I personally feel that the Scream showcased the distorted figure as Edvard himself. His trauma and mental illness affected his art, which leads me to believe that the main figure painted is experiencing an overwhelming burden of anxiety. The high contrasting colors, use of wavy lines throughout the painting, and the main figure who appears to be in a state of horror help support this. Judgment of the Scream. Formal theory. The usage of organic lines flowing throughout the painting direct us to all three figures, thus creating directional force. The high contrast by bringing the vivid oranges and blues together is visually appealing. The balance is asymmetrical. The body of water stabilizes the painting to the bridge and the figures on the left side. Contextual theory. Although this artwork did not serve interest for the church, state, business, politics, or necessarily the people, this iconic painting is one of the many of Edvard Munch's that did inspire the Expressionist movement. He is the founder of Germany's, and to a lesser extent, Austrian art's most prominent modern movement. German Expressionism would not have existed if Edvard Munch had not existed. Expressive theory. As stated in the interpretation of this painting, this work was inspired by a personal experience Munch had that he recorded in his personal journal. The Scream was a part of a series that began in 1893, The Frieze of Life. As a series of life and death, this artwork is not deemed beautiful, yet it arouses emotion with a warped figure. The open mouth of horror, the wide eyes, and elongated hands surrounding the face support this. This represents expressive theory. I believe that expressive theory is the most successful with this painting. While formal theory is also successful, the meaning behind the painting as well as the feelings being expressed best contribute to expressive theory. In summary, this late 18th century painting used many design aspects by the artist to help interpret the significance of the subject. Edvard Munch used line, contrast, and balance to achieve meaning for this subject. The elements also provided formal and expressive theories and the philosophies of evaluation. Edvard Munch helped shape the expressive movement with this painting among others as well. His work made great impact historically and continues to inspire modern art today.